All right, as people are signing on, I just want to let you know we'll start in about 60 seconds. All right, people are continuing to join us. We'll start in just about 30 seconds. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Good afternoon. My name is Krista Lucas, and I am an adjunct professor in the Natural Science Division. I met Kelsey Knox because I have been bringing my classes of non-science majors to visit the archives for the past 2 years. And this has really been a wonderful introduction for my students, as well as for myself, to Pepperdine Special Collections. It is always so interesting to learn more about really the diversity of items that are held in our very own library. I'd like to thank the libraries for organizing this event. Following today's lecture, there will be a Q&A session, excuse me. I'm so pleased to introduce today's speaker, Kelsey Knox. Kelsey holds an MLIS from UCLA and a bachelor's degree in American Studies from the University of California, Santa Cruz. For the last 5 years, she has been the archivist for the Special Collections and University Archives at Pepperdine University. In her role, Kelsey arranges and describes archival collections and special collections and teaches class sessions on archival materials and primary sources in a variety of areas, including history, English literature and composition, biology, and art history. She particularly enjoys preserving and sharing the history of Pepperdine University and the city of Malibu with students, alumni, staff, and other members of the community. Today, Kelsey will be speaking on the history of Malibu Potteries and the tiles it produced in its short history. The Malibu Tiles collection is one of Kelsey's favorite collections and special collections. Please join me in welcoming Kelsey Knox.
Thank you, Krista. And thanks everybody for being here today. So excited to see all these names popping up on the attendee list. And I'm really excited to share with you this collection today. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Wait. Sorry, I didn't go back to the beginning of my presentation. Technical difficulties. Okay. No. There. Sorry. Okay. So I'm so excited to be talking about the Malibu Tiles today. Like Krista said, this is one of my absolute favorite collections that we have here at Pepperdine. And I have gotten the privilege of working on it kind of since I started here, when we started opening the first few boxes, and through the additions that we've made to the collection ever since. And it's just been a really fun process to learn more and more about this beautiful piece of Malibu history, because it is such an important part of Malibu history. A little bit of background on Malibu Potteries, which created what we kind of refer to as the Malibu Tiles. Knight Rindge, who was one of the founding members or founding owners of Malibu, we call her the founding mother of Malibu, started Malibu Potteries in 1926. She was looking for a new business venture, and this was kind of the perfect thing given where she lived and worked. There was a high demand for ceramic tile that was used as decoration in many of the homes and other buildings. The Spanish Revival style was really popular at the time when it came to homes. And then that, combined with the fact that she lived on this beautiful land that had deposits of rich, deep clay and spring water, making ceramics just seemed like the perfect industry here. So she was a savvy businesswoman and knew that she could make money off of this and do it in a place that she loved. So she created the Malibu Potteries factory. It was down next to the Adamson House on the Malibu Lagoon. It started in 1926. And May Rindge was in no way, shape, or form an expert in ceramics. So she brought in someone who was. His name was Rufus Keeler. He was handpicked by May to be the manager of the Malibu Potteries due to his expertise in ceramics. And he was one of the foremost tile makers at the time and was local to Southern California. He had studied ceramic engineering at the University of Illinois before he returned to California, Northern California, to the Gladding McBean Tile Company in Lincoln, California. Ironically, it's about 20 minutes from where I grew up, and grew up going there on field trips as every other third grade class did. So it was a neat connection to find. And it was there that he started developing glazes to be used on particular tiles. Before he started at Malibu Potteries, he had created his own ceramics factory called Calco. It was in Southern California, and he had supervised a number of huge projects in Los Angeles, like the Eastern Columbia building, the Richfield building, and the Uniroyal building in the Chamber of Commerce. And then at Malibu Potteries, he was really the only one who knew the secret recipes for all of the beautiful, vibrant glazes that were used on Malibu tiles. The recipes were a closely guarded secret, and very few people, if any others, were allowed in the room where the ingredients and the recipes were stored. So there were many types of tiles that were produced by Malibu Potteries. These are some catalog pages from a Malibu Potteries catalog. As you can see, there are bathroom tiles, there are floor tiles, wall tiles, fireplace tiles, tabletop tiles. They made tiles for fountains, tiles for benches. They made vented air conditioner tiles, stair treads, and risers. They also created a lot of non-architectural tile pieces like chimney tops, urns, soap dishes, toothbrush holders, towel hooks. And then occasionally they also made some really beautiful, more artsy pieces like bookends, vases, and even some plates and cups. All of these tiles were made here in Malibu at the factory, and they had showrooms down in Santa Monica and Los Angeles, as it was not accessible for people shopping for tile to come up to Malibu at the time. So that is where we checked everything out. Malibu Potteries operated successfully until the start of the Great Depression in 1929, when it closed down for several months. Unfortunately, in November 1931, it caught fire, and half of the building and much of the inventory were destroyed. And the factory really never fully recovered from the disaster and shut its doors for good in 1932. This made the tiles really limited and difficult to find, as the factory was only in operation for a few years. And it means that today there just aren't a ton of tiles kind of out there in the wild per se. But there are some really beautiful installations still in existence, along with some loose tiles like the ones we have here. So the book Ceramic Art of the Malibu Potteries, 1926 to 1932, was a book written by Ronald Rindge, one of May Rindge's descendants, and several other contributors that were local historians and people involved in the Adamson House here in Malibu. It was published in 1988 and is an excellent resource for information on Malibu Potteries. It is where I learned most of the things I know about it, and it has a lot of really beautiful photos and examples of both tiles and the catalog pages, as well as some really wonderful photos of installations at the Adamson House and elsewhere. So I highly recommend checking it out if you can find a copy. So where can you see intact examples of Malibu tiles? So the Adamson House is by far the highest concentration of Malibu tiles that have been inlaid in walls, in floors, in every room in the beautiful house. And they have beautiful fountains and benches. And of course, there is a phenomenal imitation Persian rug that's made entirely out of tiles in one of the hallways of the Adamson House. The Sarah Retreat up here in the mountains is also a beautiful example of Malibu tiles. The Sarah Retreat was originally meant to be somewhere that May Rindge was going to live, but much of it burned, and they did move the remaining tiles from the factory when the factory burned up to Sarah Retreat. So over the years, there have been additional installations made with some of those remaining tiles. That is the stairs you see on the right-hand side photo, as well as the photo above it are from installations up at Sarah Retreat. And then outside of Malibu, LA City Hall has Malibu Tiles on its interior. And there are also many private residences and other commercial buildings that have used Malibu Tiles. The two photos in the center of the screen, the top one is an installation, I think, at a private residence, and the bottom one is an installation that I believe is in Carmel, California. So there are Malibu Tiles kind of all over the place, and we don't have a record of everywhere that they are. I really wish we did, and I hope that maybe someday a historian might be interested in trying to document all of the various Malibu Tiles installations. I'd like to share a little bit about special collections here at Pepperdine and how we ended up with our collection of Malibu Tiles. So a little overview of what we do here is in our Pepperdine Special Collections, we have 4 main collecting areas, of which Malibu history is one of our main collecting areas. We have the Malibu Times newspaper archive, as well as the archive of the Malibu Surfside News. We have ephemera collections and photograph collections. We have the Rindge and Adamson family papers, the Malibu Township Council records, Malibu Lake Mountain Club records, and much, much more. Our Malibu collections are growing, I think, at a faster rate than anything else we collect. And it has been amazing to be able to document all of the different facets of this community and the history of this town, which is so vibrant and so different from many other places in Southern California and in the world. So we're so excited that we get to share this every day with the students and faculty and staff that we work with here, as well as with the community. It's been really great to be able to give back in that way and know that people trust us with their collections, and in turn we get to share them and make them available for future generations. Our collections here are open to anybody who wants to visit. We don't restrict our archives based on, your status as a student or faculty. You do not have to be writing a paper. I always tell our students when I teach that we really just want to share what we have with everybody. And if that means that you want to come in and you want to just see a couple of tiles, maybe you've seen them online, or maybe they're ones that I showed you here today, you're always welcome to do so. Obviously, once COVID is done and we are more open to the public, but we are always excited to be able to show what we have to the public. So our Malibu tile collection started many years ago with a few boxes of tiles that were brought from the Goals Way estate. This was an estate that had been owned by the Ulrich family, and they donated it to Pepperdine. And these tiles were removed from different pieces on the property and eventually transferred over to special collections. And this was kind of the baby foundation of our Malibu tile collection. It's what got us interested in it. It's what kind of caught our eye. It was unlike most things that we were collecting at the time. So these are a few photos from that initial donation from the estate. And there are some that we currently have actually on display, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. Then our second kind of batch of tiles came from Jane Miller in 2019. And she had 3 of these tile sample boards. These would have probably been shown at one of the showrooms, either in Santa Monica or Los Angeles. And it would have been a way for customers to come in and decide what kind of tiles they wanted. As you can see, there's a couple different ones. There are these kind of longer, thinner ones. They're called border tiles, and I'll show you some more this afternoon when I get to the show and tell part. And then the one on the right-hand side is more of what you would see in a larger installation. All the pieces fit together very nicely. So these are 2 of these very large sample boards. They're each about 1.5 by 1.5 feet, and they weigh a ton because they're encased in plaster. So I did not bring those out today, but these are a few of our digitized versions. And then finally, we realized that many of the tiles we have fall in very similar categories of being, either border tiles or these little decorative square tiles. And we realized that Malibu tiles had many other types of tiles that we really wanted to be able to represent in special collections. We discovered that there's a store in downtown Los Angeles called Wells Tiles, and they have a huge selection of Malibu Potteries materials. It is by far, I think, the largest selection of unset Malibu tiles. So these are ones that are not have not been chipped out of concrete. They're beautiful. A lot of them are in really good shape still. And in early 2020, we got the approval to make a purchase of tiles. So we did a little bit of online shopping on their website to make a wish list of what we were hoping to get. And then 4 of us spent several hours traipsing through Wells Tiles, pulling tiles off of shelves and out of bins and getting very dirty in the process, and creating a very large array of what we wanted to purchase, which we did have to whittle down a little bit to meet our budget, but we were able to bring home about 20 or 30 tiles back to Pepperdine. And these are just a beautiful variety of sizes, of types, and of really beautiful designs. So they've been a really exciting addition to this. And then most recently, we got a call that a few boxes of Malibu tiles had been found in a storage unit here on campus. Some savvy person had saved them after they had been pulled up during a pool renovation many years ago. They had originally been inlaid around the pool here on campus. And we're so thrilled that they made it through. There were a lot that were shattered in the process of being pulled up. Again, they're very brittle, and when you start kind of trying to remove them from concrete, they don't always come out intact. But we did get about 50 additional tiles that were fully intact that we are in the process of adding to our collections right now. It's really exciting. It kind of doubled the size of our Malibu tiles collection, and we now have about 100 intact Malibu tiles in at least 15 to 20 varieties, and they are it's just a wonderful collection. I'm so excited to be sharing some of it with you today. So when we got all these tiles, a few in the beginning and then more and more and more, we were faced with, how do we house these? How do we keep them safe? How do we put them on shelves? We work primarily with paper and photographs in the archives, and with some audiovisual materials and books. Three-dimensional objects are not always our area of expertise. So I did a little research when we got those first few boxes of tiles, and I found the trays that you see kind of in the center and on the left of the screen. They're corrugated cardboard trays. They're frequently used for archaeological materials. They kind of nestle in pretty nicely. As you can see, I used tissue paper to cushion everything. And then these trays can actually stack within banker's boxes, so you can store a number of tiles in a box together. They take the pressure off of the tiles by putting it kind of on those cardboard edges. So this was a pretty safe way for us to store those initial tiles. Our initial batch of tiles was only about 15 or 20 different tiles. So not a huge amount. I think it's like 4 banker's boxes, takes up a good chunk of space on the shelves. But as we bought more tiles and we started getting kind of some weirder sizes or some really teeny tiny ones, we realized that we need kind of a better way of storing these and a safer way of storing these. So on the right-hand side is a box of the tiles that we bought at Wells Tiles. I housed them in a material called ethafoam, which I was able to carve out to the shape of the tiles. So all of those are kind of inlaid in this ethafoam with just a little bit sticking out, so I can still pull them out of their spots. But other than that, they remain nestled in these boxes. These boxes are much prettier to look at. So when we do presentations or classes, I can bring out a whole box really easily and just show them as they are in the box. It's certainly nicer to look at than tissue paper around tiles. So our hope is that eventually we'll be able to transfer most of our tiles into boxes and foam like this and assure that they are safe and secure, especially in what is well known as earthquake country here. So this is kind of an end goal, but as I said, we have about 100 tiles now. So it's definitely going to be a slow process to carve out spots for all of these. And once our tiles are housed, we create a guide to the collection called a finding aid. This is a few pages of the Malibu Tiles finding aid. And a finding aid describes the background of the collection, where it came from, the historical context of it, and then it goes into detail on, in this case, individual items within a collection. So we listed all of our tiles in our finding aid, and this was an enormous amount of research that went into this, and I will talk about it a little bit more later when I talk about our digital collections and how we're describing things. But this was a really great project that we had an intern from USC working on a couple years ago. So this completed finding aid is available on the Online Archive of California, which is where we put all of our finding aids for our collections. It's a public site, so anybody can see what we have. You can keyword search any of our collections here at Pepperdine or to any contributor of the Online Archive of California, which is most archival repositories in California. So with everything housed and described, then we get to share the materials. So one of the ways that we've been sharing our materials is through exhibits. This is a small Malibu Tiles exhibit that I put together a few years ago. It was up at the Drescher campus library here in Malibu. And then we moved it down to our Irvine campus library, which is where it currently is. And this is a way that we get to share some of our tiles with our patrons at other campus libraries. And then this will eventually come back to Payson. And I think we're hopeful that in the future, with all the tiles that we have now, we'll be able to do a slightly more comprehensive exhibit of the tiles in Payson Library. So maybe look out for that in the next couple of years, hopefully. But it's been really great to be able to share this with people other than just those on the Malibu campus. And then the biggest way that we're able to share our tiles other than in exhibits on campus libraries is through our digital collections. So bear with me through this section because this is not my area of expertise. We have a couple other people in the department who have been really wonderful in working on our digital collections and especially on the Malibu tiles. So a shout out to Josias because I'm really happy that you're here and watching this today, but Josias did a lot of the legwork on this portion of it. So I'm just going to represent it as best as I can. So why do we have digital collections? We digitize our special collections materials in order to provide access to them on the web for researchers all over the world. So not everybody is able to come to Malibu to see our collections here in person. So the more that we can digitize and make available, the more widely accessible our collections are. And that's the ultimate goal, is to have people look at our collections. But the digital objects do not replace the originals. We keep everything that we digitize. And in fact, they really help supplement the original artifacts by allowing more fragile materials, of which the Malibu tiles definitely fall within that category, to be used more but handled less. This gives fewer opportunities for anything to get broken or brittle. And so it is not only easier to access for a wider variety of people, but it also keeps the materials safe. In most cases, digitization also makes it easier to find materials because the collections are more easily searchable and because specific documents that contain text can be converted into searchable text using optical character recognition, which means that you can keyword search most words and have it come up somewhere in one of our collections and go directly to an item. So this makes documents or very document heavy collections more widely available to people because they can search it. So this is just a few of our digital collections. We have collections in all of our collecting areas, a lot of Pepperdine history, a lot of Malibu history. It's been really great to see how much the Malibu history digital collections are being used. And move on to talk a little bit about how that happens. So this is our digitization, one of our pieces of digitization equipment in our digitization lab. It is an overhead camera system from this company called Digital Transitions. It has a removable tabletop so that we can convert it to digitize different types of materials. So we have a book cradle that can go on so we can digitize books without having to hurt the binding by flipping something upside down on a scanner, like a flatbed scanner, and doing it. It also allows us to digitize the tiles, which we would never be able to do on the glass plate of a flatbed scanner because it would scratch the surface and it wouldn't digitize them as well as this system can. This is just an amazing modular system that we can swap things out of, and it has a lot of really great features. These are a couple of our digitized tiles. So they're the same pattern. These are two different tiles. But that just shows you kind of the detail that you can see in the digitization being done by the scanner. So you can see the cracked glaze of the flowers. You can see the little dirt remnants on the tiles. It allows us to magnify these photos much better than the naked eye could ever see. It also has a neat feature called raking lighting. So as you saw, there are two lights on the digitization equipment, one on each side. And typically when we're digitizing things, both lights remain on to give everything an even look. So that's what this tile is. This is the normal lighting, both lights on, photograph taken. And then this is that same exact tile with one light turned off, which is called raking lighting. And it creates the shadows and it shows you how dimensional this tile really is. So it's not a flat tile like it looks like on this. It has little lines and edges around the design that you can now see once we've turned one of the lights off. So this has been a really neat feature to play around with. This is another example of it. These are a few of my favorite tiles in our collection. They're currently on display in Irvine, so I don't have them today here. But the left-hand side is with the raking lighting. You can see more shadow around the flamingos or herons. Never remembered if we figured out what they really were. And then on the right-hand side, they look much more flat under both of the lights. Here's a couple more tiles. These are also both from the first batch of tiles that we had. The big double-headed tile or double-headed eagle is a big floor tile. So it probably would have gone either indoors somewhere on the floor or possibly even outdoors. And then the other one is a little border tile. And then digitization is great. Our equipment is amazing. And no matter how good that equipment is and how much effort and care we put into producing these high quality images, the digital collections are useless if researchers can't find our materials. So one of the most important parts of our digitization process is to create and write metadata. Metadata is heavily associated with online databases and with digital collections specifically, but the concept isn't new. It's what we use to describe the materials in our finding aid. It's what you might find when you turn over a photo in a family photo album and you find that one of your relatives has written names on the back. It's just the information and the context of the material that we're scanning or we're looking at. It's what gives everything more meaning and more context. So like I said, we had an intern from USC who did much of the metadata for both our digital collections and for the finding aid. She did it through a lot of research, mostly with the catalog pages that you see here in the Ceramic Art of the Malibu Pottery book. We do now have a digital copy of this catalog, so it's much larger and easier to flip through, but this has numbers for all the tiles, or almost all the tiles, and descriptions of many of them. So we were able to use that to build the metadata for the digital collection and also to describe all of the tiles for the physical collection in the finding aid. And to put it in perspective, it takes a couple of hours to digitize things and days and/or weeks to actually describe all of it and create the metadata for all of it. But once that's done, it's totally worth it, because then we have all of these beautiful images with all of the data that they need to be easily searchable online and ready for anybody across the world to use. So that's the end of the talking bit. I'm going to switch over to our document camera to show you all some of my favorite tiles. Like I said, we have about 100 tiles, so I had to be pretty choosy with the ones that I brought out today, but I think you'll find some really interesting examples of different kinds of tile, and I really hope you all enjoy it. And at the end, if you want to see any of them closer or longer, just let me know in the Q&A, and I can definitely pull them back out to show. I'm going to switch over. Okay, so hopefully this is working and you can all see the document camera. If you can't, then Jeff maybe yell at me so I know. So this, I just figured I'd go ahead and start big. This is one of my favorite tiles. We're gonna try this. Oh no, the light is terrible. This is one of my all-time favorite tiles. This is one that we did purchase at Wells Tiles. I absolutely love this one. It is on the larger side. It is very heavy, and the colors are just beautiful. It is not the shiniest tile we have. The glaze is a little bit glossy, a little bit matte, but I love the little daffodils on it. I love all of the different colors. There's a good chance that this was a mantelpiece tile, but I'm not 100% certain on that. So that is one thing, is we know the purposes for most tiles, but not all of them. And we are always kind of learning new things about them. So take that from another angle. And then it's a pretty thick tile as far as they go. They range from like a 1/2 inch thickness to 1 inch or 1.5 inches. So this is one of the bigger ones. This one is a little different. This is a bathroom trim tile. I really like this one. It's highly glossy, lavender background. They did make these in cream and blue and lavender. This would have gone with a ton of other different bathroom tiles. They even had little corner tiles for the edges and corners of your walls. They had coordinating soap dishes and toothbrush holders. And I just love the little, I think these are morning glories, or at least they look like it to me. And I love that this is not a square tile, but it's got this beautiful little decorative edge here. This is made on buff clay instead of the more red earth clay. So they did use different types of clays and different types of glazes to get many, many different looks. But that is a really pretty example. And then I was talking about the floor insert earlier, that double-headed eagle, and this is another floor tile. This is 2 little griffins, and I like them because I think they look a little bit silly. This is another red clay tile. This is much smaller than the eagles. The eagles is about 4 or 5 times the size of this one. So this is just a little floor tile, but it has really great dimension to it. It's a little hard to see, but this is, it goes down here where it's flooded with the color. This next tile was one of the first tiles that we got from the Goldsway estate. It is a Moorish tile is what they call it. There is a really great cookie company in Southern California that actually makes cookies that look like this shape of tile or this pattern. I love the colors on this again. I find it interesting how it uses a combination of glossy glaze. The green here is glossy, and then this blue is a really matte glaze. So I think it's a really interesting use of different kinds there. And I've seen these in a couple different color schemes. The next batch are more of the border tiles like we saw on the tile boards. This is 2 little oak leaves. It's a kind of glossier finish, red clay, about 3/4 of an inch thick. And then this one has a really beautiful interlocking pattern of blue and black. These edges are concrete. This was one of the ones that was pulled up from the pool area. So it, it's not necessarily as neat and pretty as an unset tile, but I'm thrilled that we have more examples of these border tiles with these different patterns. This is another border tile, but a totally different style. So this one is very matte. The yellow is very matte. The black is kind of a semi-gloss. And this one is on the red as well, red clay. Another one that we got at Wells Tiles. And I just like the kind of more geometric look to this, as opposed to the more artistic, flowery look. This next piece is a mantle insert piece. This is one of the kind, I should have shown you a raked lighting version of this, a scan, because it has much more dimension than you can see under this document camera. This is all different levels here where the different colors are. So it's not nearly as flat as it kind of looks. This is kind of on a semi-buff, semi-red color. And it does have, this is the pattern number, which is actually in the catalog. So it's B122. This style is very similar to the tiles that Rufus Keeler, the ceramicist, was making with his previous company, Calco Tiles. If you see them side by side, you'll see that the colors are very similar and the styles are very similar as well. This next tile is by far one of the most intricate that we have as far as the design goes. It's very glossy, it's very flat, it does not have many raised edges, but it has this beautiful design of a deer on it with flowers, and it is a tea tile. I don't know exactly what it means to be a tea tile, other than my assumption is that it could be where you would set maybe a teapot or a teacup. I am not positive, so if anybody has a better understanding, by all means, let me know. And then I've got about 3 more to show you all. This one is glazed unlike any other that we have in our collection. It is a bright copper glaze, and you can actually see some oxidation at the sides here where it started to turn green. It's a pretty small one. It's also on red clay, and I just think it's so intriguing. It's very different. Then we have one of the perforated vent tiles. So these could have been inset in outdoor walls to allow breeze to flow through them. They could have been put over heating registers. They came in a variety of sizes and designs. This one is a little bit hard to see against the dark background. It's glazed in black, and they also came in blue and green and brown. And it's got, you know, this beautiful decorative pattern here that's a little difficult to see. And then finally, while the front of this tile is also really neat, I love the shape of it. The glaze reminds me of the daffodil tile I showed at the beginning. What is really intriguing about this one is that it is actually stamped with Malibu on the back. We found that most of the Malibu tiles were not stamped. I don't know how they decided what to stamp and what not to stamp. I have seen both plain Malibu stamps and I think also some Malibu Potteries stamps, but the majority of ours are just plain on the back. So that's why I wanted to show that one. And that really concludes what I've got. And I'm happy to take any questions that anybody has come up with.
Kelsey, we have a question that just came in the chat. Okay. Are the tiles in Payson Library Malibu tiles?
Oh, the ones that are inlaid in the floor. They are not. They are Malibu Ceramics Works, but Malibu Ceramics Works has based their tiles off of existing Malibu tiles. So they did a lot of research and they have pretty closely matched the style and glazing of Malibu Potteries. So they've done a lot of replicas of some of the very popular famous Malibu Potteries things, like the face fountain that's down at the Adamson house. Malibu Ceramics Works has created a copy of that and some other things. So a lot of the ones on campus are Malibu Ceramic Works.
Keep those questions coming in the chat box. We have another one that just came up. Can you clean the ingrained dirt on that one tile you showed?
The answer is probably. I did wipe down some of the ones that had been brought in from the pool renovation because they were really, really dirty. We haven't like scrubbed down the old ones. I haven't really decided, and maybe my colleagues want to chime in on whether or not they think it's a good idea, but my guess is that because they held up so well being used both outdoors and indoors, I don't think it would damage it to wipe it gently down with a damp cloth, but probably not like a scrub brush.
And speaking of colleagues or a former colleague, Josiah Bartram wrote that they are flamingos.
Flamingos, thank you. I knew you would know that.
Another question just came up. What does the design process look like for the art on the tiles?
You know, that's a question I'm not really sure of the answer of. These were made almost 100 years ago, and there is some more information about kind of the artistic side in that Malibu ceramics book. I'd highly recommend it. I'm not really an artist, so it's kind of hard to speak to that part because I'm just really not an expert on that. But it does go into a little bit more of the design process and the glazing. And there were a lot of different ways that they did them. Some of them are stamped and then glazed in kind of the relief of the stamp. And some of them are actually hand drawn on. So it all depended on the type of tile.
So when you did the show and tell part of your presentation, you started with your favorite tile. Do you have a second favorite tile?
I think my second favorite tile is the little griffins because I think they're funny.
Another question just came in. How did the fire at the Malibu Potteries factory start?
I don't remember offhand. I'm really not sure. That might be in that book.
Okay. A follow-up, was it a wildfire or was it in the factory itself?
I think it was in the factory itself. It is very close to the water, so it's pretty removed from the kind of chaparral of the mountains here. So I think it was a factory fire.
Not a question, but a shout out to fellow library collections and archives staff.
I work with the best people. I'm just throwing that out there.
I've got a question. How long does it take to cut into the ethofoam to make for the inserts? That seems like
a long time. I mean, part of it was a learning process because I had not done it before, and part of it was also maybe not having the best tools. I use like X-Acto knives to do it, and I'm not sure if there's something that could have given me like a better access to an angle. But I traced each one onto the ethofoam first, and then just started cutting down and cutting chunks of it out. So several hours at least to do a box of them. And we did that actually like 2 days before the library shut down for COVID. We had just brought all the Wells tiles in and we wanted to get them safely put away before what we thought was going to be a few weeks out of the office. So it was kind of like one of the last projects I did before we left the library.
Another question just popped up. What is your favorite aspect of your job?
I think my favorite aspect of my job is getting to become a mini expert on a lot of different subjects. Because every time we get a collection in or someone's papers in order to really do the background work on it, I have to learn a lot about a lot of things that I have no knowledge of, like ceramics, because I don't know anything about ceramics. I did not know what a Malibu tile was when I walked in the door 5 years ago. And you just tend to learn on the job and learn a lot of different random topics. So I think that's one of the things that I love. But the other thing I love is I love getting to then share that knowledge with other people, whether it's in a presentation or a class. I absolutely love teaching. And I love the look that students give when they like figure something out that they're really excited about, because it's really neat to kind of tap into that in other people.
And I'm going to follow that up with a question to which I kind of know the answer to, but if a professor wants you to teach the class, how can they get in touch with you?
Just shoot either myself or my colleague Melissa Nikinen an email, and we would be happy to work with you on who is best suited to teach your class and what your class needs are. We love adding new classes and using collections that we haven't gotten to use before. So I was really lucky. I got to teach a ceramics class session last semester using the Malibu tiles, which was the first time that we had used the Malibu tiles as a collection, as like a specific topic of a class. So yes, absolutely contact us and we'll work with you on it.
Another attendee writes, if we want to own original Malibu tiles, are they findable and affordable?
Yes. I mean, I guess it depends on a definition of affordable, but they are findable. The Adamson House does sell some. I think most of the ones they have are on the smaller side. Wells Tiles, like I said, is probably the best source of purchasing Malibu tiles. They know what they're talking about there, which is really great because Malibu tiles are similar to a lot of other tiles that were created at the time. So if you want to know that you are for sure getting an authentic Malibu tiles, I think that Wells Tiles is probably the place to look, although you can find them on eBay and Etsy occasionally. And even some of the kind of different or like more bizarre pieces of Malibu potteries end up there occasionally. But shout out to Wells Tiles because they were great to work with, and they have a really beautiful selection of tiles.
Another attendee writes, it looked like the floor tiles had raised decorations. Did the raised parts wear off unevenly?
So the floor tiles actually have depressed decorations, so nothing is sticking up. The blue glaze is sunk into the tile. So I think that probably would have cut down on the wear because your feet wouldn't have been rubbing against the actual blue of the glaze.
Another attendee writes, can you talk about some of your other favorite collections besides the Malibu tiles?
Absolutely. I think one of my favorite collections and something that I am the most proud of is that the graphic newspaper, which is Pepperdine's student newspaper, is the oldest running student organization on campus. They started right after the campus opened in 1937. And not only do we have a nearly complete run of the graphic newspaper, but we did have it all digitized over the past few years. It's all available in our digital collections and it is text searchable. So it's amazing how much it can be used now. And I love bringing it up with the students because it's fun for them to read kind of older articles. And there was like a gossip column that ran in the 40s that was really great because it's all very innocent gossip, but it's really fun to read. So I love the graphic. I love the Margaret Brock papers. She was a philanthropist. She was a donor to Pepperdine. She worked intensely with the law school here. She was really involved in politics, much more than most women of her era were. And her papers included a ton of letters with former presidents and sitting presidents. And they're a really great resource. And also nobody's ever written a biography on her. And I think someone definitely should. So those are two of my favorites.
Not a question, but a panelist, an attendee made a comment about organizing a tile exhibition in Pomona, and this attendee worked with Norman Carlson, whose book on tiles she recommends.
Oh, cool. I'll check it out and I'll see if we have it. We have some other tile books in special collections, so it could be in there, but if not, it sounds like a perfect addition.
And at this point, that was all the questions. I'll give another few seconds if anyone has any final questions. In the meantime, Kelsey, do you have any final thoughts if there are no more questions?
I don't think so, but if anybody is interested in learning more about them or seeing them in person once campus reopens fully, I'm happy to bring them out at any time or work with other professors who want them in their classes. You know, we'd love to share them. And it is a little disappointing that with the shutdown last year, we did not get to share that big acquisition that we made with Wells Tiles because it really did vastly improve our collections. And then I'm just really excited to process this next batch that came from the pool storage. And hopefully we'll have that up in our digital collection and in our finding aid in the next few months.
Great. Well, Kelsey, thank you so much for sharing a bit of your day, your wisdom, and our wonderful collections at Pepperdine Libraries and Special Collections.
Yeah, thanks for having me on to discuss it.
And to our attendees, thank you all for joining us for today's event. I want to make you aware, if you're not already, we have another event tomorrow. It's the launch of our Pepperdine Alumni Author Lecture Series with Dr. Catherine Meeks, and that's tomorrow, Tuesday, April 27th at 2 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. You can register for this and other events at library.pepperdine.edu/events. And we hope to see you there. Kelsey is actually our MC tomorrow, so she'll be back on Zoom. And we look forward to seeing you all then. But at this point, we'll wrap this up and we'll hope to see you tomorrow. Thank you all for coming.